this looks fun.
It's a medium, not a genre. It's not part-time, it's a lifetime.
Hey guys, Baron is back, and as an animation and character design big fanatic of all that stuff, I couldn't help but notice this little conversation that was being had about the Helluva Boss characters, gluttony and lust. Specifically gluttony, as they seem to think the design is a little strange and doesn't really work. Which, when of course isn't like a big deal, as people have their types and such, but for some reason it's the real issue they have with it is that it's different than like how the gluttony is usually perceived. And that's just weird to me. Like, just saying that something is weird for being different is not really something which makes sense to me. And as a character design, like someone who's experienced that for a while, I want to go into how these designs do work by coming up with my own little interpretations of the seven deadly sins, as also like a really open place where even though some character designs for it are really cool, other ones they can also be like fall into a bunch of different like stereotypes, which after a bit of time can get a little old. So I'm gonna show you how I and how most likely Viv and other artists have shaken it up. So the first thing I want to point out is that when making these sins, I try to make them both appealing for people who are willing to follow into the sins' ideology, and while also being creepy to people who are less likely to join. And also these character designs are like very pretty intricate in how I came up with like them, so not saying that you have to like follow every single one of these types of rules, but I think it's pretty helpful, as I personally like when the character designs are like, when you look at them and it feels like there are like a million things going on in your head. So anyway, we're going to Pride. First thing I wanted to think of is like, what could an animal be that could like represent this like choice of sin? And since prideful, I thought of like a bird, like a peacock. So that's kind of what I built like a little bit of the design around. But the way how I could like chose to switch it up is I tried to think a little more outside the box. Like I would have it so the actual like guy is like a glowing orb, sort of like just a glowing spirit who like radiates a ton of light when other things do not. And I also chose, in order to like make the pride seem more noticeable, I decided to have it contained within a piece of iron, or more specifically like a piece of armor, which would work like a catalyst to this special light. And another like big thing which I chose to do in order to like give these sins more depth to their design is I used the random wheel generator, and I put all the seven deadly sins in there. And what I would do is for each member I would spin the wheel, and whichever like member lands from there, I would add one of their stereotyped attributes to the sin that I'm working on. So for pride, I got gluttony. So what I did was I made pride a lot larger, while also keeping, well, to be more specific, I made the armor larger, but the spirit is still like really small, where it still like radiates a ton of light. And I feel like that would like work as like a stationary like symbol of pride, as when I think of pride, I think of like the statues that can just radiate a certain aura just by standing still. I also consider like a way that Pride could move around would be from levitation, considering that's like a prideful attribute of motion. And I also add like a little triangle shape to the top to like add to like being like an arrow up top, because that kind of represents pride. And with that being said, that's how I came up with this design. I really like it. I thought it was a great way to start off these, and I hope you enjoy the other ones as well. So next on the list of stinginess, I went with greed. I'm doing this in this one order that Google recommended, but for for greed, I decided to like have it be like a little bit of more subtle king-like idea, like someone who's doing bad stuff without others knowing it. And my choice is I decided to make him a fox, but like in sheep's clothing, similar to the wolf in sheep's clothing thing, where like first foxes are sneaky, they're conniving, and they also kind of like, at least from what I've seen, like try and mask themselves by like trying to fit in with other like similar looking characters. So I chose wolf, and of course like wolf in sheep's clothing. I think that stuff is, I think you understand. But I also decided to like make it so he stores items like the greed stuff in his wool. I even made it so like the horns area where you'd imagine the like sheep's horns would be in like little loops, so they can like work as cages. And I think in order to like make that work, I would have the fur from the fox's actual like fur be spiky, while of course the wool is all soft and comforting. And I decided to give it a purple aesthetic to feel like luxury, as usually green is associated with yellow like the gold, but since purple is like considered such a luxurious color, I thought that would work well for this particular sin. And I had for who I spun the wheel on, for greed it was sloth, so I applied that to his posture to make it more slumped down. And with that being said, I think I came up with a pretty interesting design for greed, as that's how my choices of intricacies got worked in. So next is lust, and I think I went pretty out there with how I chose to interpret them. So first off, since when I think of lust, like the more like problematic sides of lust, the more manipulative sides of it, I think of pheromones. So I started lust around mushrooms to make that point more clear. And along with that, I had the mushrooms sort of serve as like some sort of like throne, or like little like base for the actual sin, who's like this worm. And I would have it so the worm, first of all, would be non-binary, so it can like fit all the different types of needs of whoever's been involved in the last years. And I would also have it so it would have red eyes, like at like predatory nature. I'd also give it 4 arms for multiple people, and I'd decided on to like sort of cyan blue. I think it feels a little bit more like alien-y, and a bit more like welcoming in that sense, especially compared to like a bluer sense for the mushroom. And I had it so pride would be the one that got spun on the wheel, so I made it like look all like ready, all self-assertive. And I think what I came up with was pretty interesting, and I don't really think I can come up with like a lust example which I can see that's similar to this. So next is envy. Envy was actually probably the hardest one, at least in theory, for me to come up with other designs for, because unlike pretty much every other sin, envy is the one which really doesn't have like a specific image like connected to it. It's too like broad in order to like be specifically interpreted by like a considerable amount of artists. So I actually chose like look at like other examples to see if I can like just see what I could come up with then. One of the like biggest ideas that, or like biggest like series I can think of which go into slot to like the 7 deadly sins is the Darksiders, and with that they gave me a pretty interesting like design with use of greens, make it more spacey despite the location. But anyway, for envy I think I came up with something pretty interesting. I had it so I would use multiple masks to represent different stages of envy, because envy is like pretty layered in that sense, and I would have it so it would be a panther, because like cats like that kind of catty and can act pretty emotionally, as envy can lead to. Also they look kind of cool. Hats, so like the clothes like all like ravaged, possibly even like sweat dripping, and in order to like represent like the like different aspects, like the different bounds that envy can bring someone to. I chose like make envy red, like to emphasize the frustration that envy can lead to, without like going like far enough to make it like go into wrath territory. As the wheel that I got for this was lust, so I made like at least one of the masks, a little lovey-dovey, and I applied some, and just like the posing I feel like just works with that type of thing. And along with pants I also gave him some spider attributes, like some sort of webbing type abilities, and along with multiple eyes, and I think that came with something that's pretty interesting, and I think this is a great example of like how I did not know how like well I could like do something for this, but I think it turned out pretty great. So gluttony, an idea, seems like someone who would be like one of the easiest to try and change up, as gluttony is usually portrayed as large, lethargic, can barely even move. But I wanted to make it less simple to just making the character skinny. I wanted to like think of something to really like go out there with it. So I thought to myself, thinking on this for what? If only I could gain the knowledge to... Oh. Okay, we can do that. So I made him gluttonous for knowledge. I have him like capture knowledge, provide knowledge, and steal knowledge in like a gluttonous fashion, sort of. And I decided to give him like one eye, one like special eye, while also being hooded to like make that eye like appear more imposing. And this eye would like take and control like the gaining and of the gluttonous knowledge. I felt like that would make it pretty, like be a really good way to actually make it pretty unique without just simply going skinny, even though it is skinny and all. I also decided to add wings because I wanted to make it more like angel-like, because I think like the idea of a corrupted angel, especially if it's with a motivation like this, is a pretty interesting concept. Along with it, also giving him maybe 2 wands, something that can create a haze, which can soothe the mind in order to make like them easier to play around with. And also for gluttony, when I spun the wheel I got greed, so after like some consideration, I decided to give him some like golden and like decorations, particularly in one like area around his neck, like help add it onto the fact that yes, this guy that doesn't need to swallow food. It is a food that he only like absorbs to like his eye. And I feel like I came up with something pretty interesting with it, and I kinda like it. I like it a lot. So next up is Raph, and I feel like I had more trouble coming up with her design than like I would have expected. So I think it was because Raph, I often, as everyone else sees it, just as like a big red demon, something like that, as like a member of the Seven Deadly Sins Raph, and well, the fine chain setup while also keeping, of course, that idea of Raph, because it is a pretty well-established way of noting its presence. So I decided to like make aim for like the more like invincible side that Raph has, like the can barely be stopped, like can barely be touched. So I decided to make Raph reminiscent of an armadillo, as those can like roll up and or become harder and more like problematic for something that's in its way. And with that, I also decided to make it green as a way to like separate it, as I felt like that would add some like extra interest into its design. Aim for more of that trying to make the designs look like there's a lot going on vibe. And I also decided to like make its back made up of like different pieces of land. So I think that would add a bit of like raphness to for the impenetrable stuff, like all this stuff going on the back, and it's not like phasing her at all. And I also decided to add an extra like bit of lore to it by adding in this slime, which would like permeate off of like some of the more broken areas of the Raph's body. And I know that would be in practice it did come out like looking better than I expected. And also I decided to add lanterns onto these trees that are on the backlands. I felt like that would like make the presence of her look even more intimidating. Like I really aimed for intimidation with Raph. First, it's Raph and stuff. Envy is the one I got for this, so that could also be like green with Envy. And with that being said, we have the Raph design, and I like it quite a bit. I think I gave her the justice that Raph deserves. So for Sloth, as the final one, I like the idea of Sloth being simple but still keeping like the whole story can be read up with this character vibe. So I made her a catfish because I associate like fishes like that with them being sloths. And so in order to so I might as well mention that I chose Raph as like since the last one, that one's the one I gave to Sloth as a thing I can add traits from. The thing is that Raph and Sloth are kind of sort of opposites on sometimes. So it's a little tough like figuring out like how like apply a Raph component into Sloth. But I came up with the idea of making like the damage that Sloth can cause a little accidental, as a rain like substance like leaks from her body, and she also like has electric gland inside of her, which can like activate and create like thunder I thought Rain would be like an interesting choice for a sloth type character to like add some depth to it and stuff, like I've been trying to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the sloth design. Just a floating catfish with rain. It sounds like a boss in the video game. So that's been it for the drawings, for the redrawings of the 7 Deadly Sins. I hope you come out of this video like learning a bit or two about how you can like better see or even create your original character designs, and also to give Helluva Boss a bit of credit for its unique approaches to these designs. Designs in general, Season 2 is really, really good. So with that being said, you'll be seeing this artist later. So you say I'm complicated, and I must be out of my mind, but you've had me underrated, waited. Oh, what's wrong with being, what's wrong with being, what's wrong with being confident? Oh, what's wrong with being, what's wrong with being, what's wrong with being confident? Oh.